Welcome to the Matrix and the U.S. Constitution, Part 4. Who really has the power? It's a question you often ask yourself when the government so-called passes laws that seem unconstitutional, to take away people's personal freedoms, their natural rights. You ask yourself these questions. If you have a modicum of intelligence, you do ask yourself these questions. If you don't, then chances are this video may not be for you. Enjoy your bread and circuses. But for the rest of us that have these questions, that are open to public discourse, that want more information, this is for you.
The Public Trust Fund, Sestweke Vi. The United States Constitution was converted into a trust, and the legal definition of a trust is a legal obligation with respect to property given by one person, donor, to another, trustee, to the advantage of a beneficiary, Americans. The property in the trust includes all land, your personal possessions that you believe you own, and your physical body. The donor of the trust is the King of England and the Holy Roman Church. The trustees are all federal and state public officials, which means that they truly are agents of a foreign power, the King and the Vatican. The reason the Constitution was converted into a trust is because, as a non-trust business plan, the Constitution completely bound the hands of our government officials. By their converting it into a trust, our public officials were then free to make any changes they desired to this government without their constituents' knowledge. The rules of a trust are secret, and no trustee can be compelled to divulge those rules. And the rules can be changed by the trustees without notice to the beneficiary. The one pitfall confronting them in their plan was the fact that by converting the Constitution into a trust, our public officials had to legally assign a beneficiary, and the beneficiary chosen could not offend or be in contrast to the numerous international treaties that were in force. Our public officials wanted to stay in control of the trust as the trustees. However, a trustee cannot also be a beneficiary. So even though the Constitution was never designed or written for the sovereign American people, they unknowingly became the beneficiary of this secret trust, and hence the creation of the propaganda regarding our constitutional rights. All high-ranking public officials, lawyers, and judges laugh at the ignorance of people who claim that their constitutional rights have been violated. Lawyers are actually taught to treat the members of the general public as inferior individuals. This also explains the air of arrogance that most lawyers convey in their demeanor and speech. The more powerful agents of the states and the federal government, however, have been stealing the benefits from the trust through numerous maneuvers that have the appearance of being lawful. In their defense, many former public officials, agents, were not corrupt to begin with, but by accepting bribes or as a result of enjoying an arranged extramarital relationship, they became the victim of an extortion plot and succumbed to the threat to expose the bribe or their illicit affair to their constituents. By becoming an agent, all was forgiven and forgotten. The people who arranged the bribes also arranged the situations and applied the pressure to force honest men to become dishonest. An example of this could be a sudden demand by a bank to pay off a loan based upon a hidden clause in the loan contract, and which could result in a foreclosure, bankruptcy, and scandal. There are no remaining public federal employees in America. All employees who you believe to be a part of America's government are actually agents of a foreign government, and this definition includes the president. The federal elections are a joke on us. All of the candidates have been jointly pre-selected and pre-screened by the national boards of the Republican and Democratic parties well before the election process. All of our federally elected officials, appointed administrators, federal police, and judges receive their paychecks through the Office of Personal Management. OPM is a division of the International Monetary Fund, which is owned by the Rockefeller and Rothschild families and their banking empires, which operates in tandem with the United Nations. The IRS and Interpol are owned by the International Monetary Fund, which has been identified in an earlier version of the U.S. Army Manual as a communist organization. Those Americans who do not know how to assert their beneficiary status are treated by the government and their courts as a corporate fiction. The corporate governments and their courts only have jurisdiction over corporations. Corporations have no rights or jurisdiction over living people and are only provided considerations which have been pre-negotiated in contracts by their directors. Otherwise, they're governed totally by commercial law, and so are you. Part 2. At this point, I believe I should address a corporate fiction for you by creating a situation you can relate to. Situation. You've decided to go into business for yourself, and you thought up a clever name for your business. Everything you've read and the advice you received from a lawyer or friend suggests that you should incorporate your business. To incorporate is to create a business on paper. It isn't real, it is a business in theory, which makes it a fiction. The lawyer or accountant you hire to prepare your corporation records your business with the state as a state corporation and identifies you as president on the board of directors, not the owner. Your business is now a corporate fiction, and by recording the business as a state corporation, you no longer own it, the state owns it. You just gave your business away and made yourself an employee.
And here we have Hale versus Hinkle. It is a United States Supreme Court case. It was decided in 1906, and it shed some light on the distinction between a corporation and a real living soul. Corporations are beholden to the state, while private, and I want to stress the word private individuals are not. And this is a very interesting case. I think I'm going to do a video solely dedicated to this particular case, because I think it sheds a lot of light on a lot of different things. But here we read, if, whenever an officer or employee of a corporation were summoned before a grand jury as a witness, he could refuse to produce the books and documents of such corporation upon the ground that that would incriminate the corporation itself, it would result in the failure of a large number of cases where the illegal combination was determinable only upon the examination of such papers. Conceding that the witness was an officer of the corporation under investigation and that he was entitled to assert the rights of corporation with respect to the production of its books and papers, we are of the opinion that there is a clear distinction in this particular between an individual and a corporation, and that the latter has no right to refuse to submit its books and papers for an examination at the suit of the state. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to an investigation so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom beyond the protection of his life and liberty. His rights are such as existed by the laws of the land long antecedent to the organization of the state, and can only be taken away him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution. Among his rights are refusal to incriminate himself and the immunity of himself and his property from arrest or seizure except under a warrant of the law. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. Read Public Rights Doctrine. Up on the other hand, the corporation is a creature of the state. It is presumed to be incorporated for the benefit of the public. It receives certain special privileges and franchises and holds them subject to the laws of the state and the limitations of its charter. Its powers are limited by law. It can make no contract not authorized by its charter. Its rights to act as a corporation are only preserved to it so long as it obeys the laws of its creation. There is a reserved right in the legislature to investigate its contracts and find out whether it has exceeded its powers. It would be a strange anomaly to hold that a state, having chartered a corporation to make use of certain franchises, could not, in the exercise of its sovereignty, inquire how these franchises have been employed and whether they have been abused, and demand the production of the corporate books and papers for that purpose. The defense amounts to this, that an officer of a corporation which is charged with a criminal violation of the statute may plead the criminality of such corporation as a refusal to produce his books. To state this proposition is to answer it. While an individual may lawfully refuse to answer incriminating questions unless protected by an immunity statute, it does not follow that a corporation, vested with special privileges and franchises, may refuse to show its hand when charged with an abuse of such privileges.
Our presumed government representatives have done the same thing to each of us. They changed each of us from a sovereign into a corporate fiction. Your corporate name is easily identifiable in that it is expressed in all capital letters on all your documents and all communications received from every government agency. The reason for converting every sovereign American into a corporate fiction dates back to the principle of law under the king. The king is a sovereign monarch and dictator who by his authority creates the laws that govern his subjects. He is the source of law, and therefore the law cannot be enforced against him. In America, the source of law is the sovereign people, and therefore no laws can be enforced against the source, except for those specifically agreed to or defined by the original Constitution. In the course of my research that I'm conducting for another video that I will be posting shortly, I ran across a definition that should put to rest for all the trolls and everything that come on these videos as to whether or not the people are sovereign. And it's a confusion because these people, these trolls, they don't understand that sovereignty of the United States is a qualified sovereignty within their delegated powers coming from the Constitution. But there still remains, in light of the Marshall Court and that decision, and I believe the advent of the 11th Amendment and so forth, of whether the individual is sovereign or not. And there seems to be this consensus amongst those who are not very educated on these subjects that our sovereignty rests in our government. Well, this dictionary, this is an 1880 Bouvier's dictionary, volume 2. And I looked up and I found the definition of United States of America from Judge Bouvier. And they give a variety of definitions, and I want to read this to you so that we can get an understanding of exactly why the people are sovereign. And I'm going to start right here. And you can find a copy of this dictionary at SPC University. Just go, you get a free membership, go in, and under the PDF section, you'll find dictionaries and you'll find it there. You can download it and you can read this for yourself. And you'll see right here it says, the United States have certain powers, the principal of which are enumerated in Article 1, Section 8, running into 17 specific powers. Others are granted to particular branches of the government, as the treaty-making power to the President and Senate. These have an equal effect in all the states, and so far as an authority is vested in the government of the Union or in any department of it, and so far as the states are prohibited from the exercise of certain powers. So far in our domestic affairs, we are a unity. Within these granted powers, the sovereignty of the United States is supreme. Notice it says within these granted powers, the sovereignty of the United States is supreme. The Constitution and the laws made in pursuance of it, and all treaties, are the supreme law of the land. Article 6. And they not only govern in the words, but in their meaning. If the sense is ambiguous or doubtful, the United States, through their courts, in all cases where the rights of an individual are concerned, are the rightful expositors. For without the authority of explaining this meaning, the United States would not be sovereign. In these matters, particularly in the limitation put on the sovereignty of the states, it has been sometimes said that the Constitution executes itself. This expression may be allowed, but with as much propriety, these may be said to be laws which the people have enacted themselves, and no laws of Congress can either take from, add to, or confirm them. They are rights, privileges, or immunities which are granted by the people, and are beyond the power of Congress or state legislatures, and they require no law to give them force or efficiency. The members of Congress are exempted from arrest, except for treason, felony, and breach of the peace, and going to and returning from the seat of government. Article 1, subsection 6. It is obvious that no law can affect this immunity. On these subjects, all laws are purely nugatory, because if they go beyond or fall short of the provisions of the Constitution, they may always be appealed to. An individual has just what that gives him, no less and no more. It may be laid down as a universal rule, admitting of no exception, that when the Constitution has established a disability or immunity, a privilege or a right, these are precisely as that instrument has fixed them, and can be neither augmented or curtailed by any act or law either of Congress or a state legislature. We are more particular in stating this principle because it has sometimes been forgotten both by the legislatures and theoretical expositors of the Constitution. It has been justly thought a matter of importance to determine from what source the United States derived their authority.
When the Constitution was framed, the people of this country were not an uninformed mass of individuals. They were united into regular communities under state governments, and to these had confided the whole mass of sovereign power which they chose to entrust out of their own hands. The question here proposed is whether our bond of union is a compact entered into by the states or the Constitution is an organic law established by the people. To this question, the preamble gives a decisive answer. We, the people, ordained and established this Constitution. The members of the convention which formed it were indeed appointed by the states, but the government of the states had only a delegated power, and if they had an inclination, had no authority to transfer the allegiance of the people from one sovereign to another. And if they had an inclination, had no authority to transfer the allegiance of the people from one sovereign to another. The great men who formed the Constitution were sensible of this want of power and recommended it to the people themselves. They assembled in their own conventions and adopted it, acting in their original capacity as individuals and not as representing states. The state governments are passed by in silence. They had no part in making it, and though they had certain duties to perform, as the appointment of senators, are properly not parties to it. The people in their capacity as sovereign, 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 made and adopted it, and it binds the state governments without their consent. The United States as a whole, therefore, emanates from the people and not from the states, and the Constitution and laws of the states, whether made before or since the adoption of that of the United States, or subordinate to it, and the laws made in pursuance of it. A consequence of great importance flows from this fact. The laws of the United States act directly on individuals. A consequence of great importance flows from this fact. The laws of the United States act directly on individuals, and they are directly and not immediately responsible through the state governments. This is the most important improvement made by our Constitution over all previous confederacies. As a corollary from this, if not more properly a part of it, the laws act only on states through individuals. They are supreme over persons and cases, but do not touch the states but through them. If a state passes an ex post facto law, or passes a law impairing the obligation of contracts, or makes anything but gold or silver a tender in payment of debts, Congress passes no law which touches the state. It is sufficient that these laws are void, and when a case is brought before court, it, without any law of Congress, would declare them void. They give no person an immunity, nor deprive any of a right. Again, should a state pass a law declaring war against a foreign nation, grant letters of marque and reprisals, arm troops, or keep ships of war in time of peace, individuals acting under such laws will be responsible to the United States. They might be treated and punished as traitors or pirates, but Congress would and could pass no law against the state, and for this simple reason, because the state is sovereign, and it is a maxim consecrated in public law as well as common sense, which none of you trolls have, and the necessity of the case that a sovereign is answerable for his acts only to God and to his own conscience. The Constitution and laws made in pursuance of it, that is, laws within their granted powers, and all treaties are the supreme law of the land. And the judiciary, Article 3, Section 1, gives to the Supreme Court the right of interpreting them. But this court is but another name for the United States, and this power necessarily results from their sovereignty. For the United States would not be truly sovereign without their interpretation as well as the letter of the law governed. But this power of the court is confined to cases brought before them and does not embrace principles independent of these cases. They have no power analogous to that of the Roman praetor of declaring the meaning of the Constitution by edicts. Any opinion, however strongly expressed, has no authority beyond the reasoning by which it is supported and binds no one. But the point embraced in the case is as much a part of the law as though embraced in the letter of the law or Constitution, and it binds public functionaries, whether the states or United States, as well as private persons, and this of necessity, as there is no authority above a sovereign to which an appeal can be made. I could go on and on reading this. I could just go on and on, but this should be obvious to anywhere. This is Bouvier's 1880 Volume 2, It's in Bouvier's 1880 Volume 2. It's under the definition of United States of America. Okay, Judge Bouvier is very clear. You have all these people down in the comment section talking about they passed the laws, they changed the laws. It's not within the power of Congress or anyone in the federal government to take away the sovereignty of the people that spoke them into existence. And as this judge said, that should be common sense. Common sense is that sense by which no other sense makes any sense at all. Y'all get this and spread this around and make videos out of it and crush what these people are talking about on the internet and make them look like the fools that they are, because they're trying to fool all of y'all. They're trying to shame y'all into compliance into a new world order. They want you to be mindless followers and just do what you're told and shut the hell up. Freedom is something that you have to fight for. If you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights. As Thomas Jefferson said, those who hope to be both ignorant and free are hoping for something that never has been and never will be. Those laws are defined as theft, assault, and criminal mischief. But since the colonists never voted on the Constitution, none of these offenses are enforceable against a living sovereign. They're enforceable, however, against a corporation or corporate fiction.
Whoo! That was heavy. That was heavy. So in other words, you work for a corporation. Doesn't matter what kind. Corporation says, the government says that you all have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G in order to keep your jobs, right? There's this thing outside, and you gotta go take something for it. Follow me now. As soon as you get that email, that memo, that declaration, what you're supposed to do is pack up your personal shit and leave and go home. Every single person that is told that. That's what you're supposed to do. Not bend over and take it up the wazoo because some corporate figurehead says, well, Uncle Sam says, to hell with Uncle Sam. I'm an individual, a sovereign. I don't go by other people's laws and edicts and all this other BS. I make my own decisions for myself. I'm working here for this paycheck, all this other shit. No, I don't want no part of it. Over the past few years, if that had happened, tell me what could they have done? If everybody who got this memo or this email is like, okay, gonna clean up my desk, I'm gonna take my personal shit, all your stuff, I'm gonna leave it behind, I'm gonna put my shit in a box, and I'm gonna go home. What power does the corporation have? Without you, they have nothing. You're the machine that runs it. I don't care how many machines they actually have. You're the brain power behind it. Every single one of you. Working in the hospitals, transportation systems, airlines, whatever it is. If everybody says, wait a minute, okay, now, here's your stuff, this is mine, I'm taking this and I'm going home. Guess what they have to do? Oh, the people are united as one. They know who has the power, and we have none. Is that what you saw happen, though? You saw the exact opposite. Everybody folded like cardboard, unfortunately. More to come, people, more to come. I hope the language is not going over your head, and I pray that you're understanding everything therein. Until next time, peace.